Hi, everybody. I've got two exciting things I want to talk about. The first thing is, by the way, thank you for watching this video. If you like what you watch in this video, if you like my content, please think about subscribing. Just click that subscribe button, you know, the spiel, but it really does help, especially for YouTube content creators like myself who believe that they have a lot of important information to give out and publicize, you know, make the public aware. I want to tell people about this. And I'm so excited. I want to share this with everybody. So YouTube, excuse me, this is live. You can tell. YouTube is a great medium, a great platform for stuff like this. I'm so pleased. So please, I'm going to first talk about performing and my plans for my alter ego character, Samantha Bahar. And that's the first part. And then the second part, I'm going to introduce something really, really interesting about the Torah, about specifically the book of Genesis, the biblical book of Genesis, something that I discovered. And that nicely jibes with this essay that I wanted to talk about just in general about the ages in Genesis chapter 5. So anyway, first, all right, let's get to the more relatable stuff first. All right, so you may know by now that I have developed this alter ego character, Samantha Bahar, and I've posted some videos. I've interviewed some people where I dress up. Well, all right, to put it briefly, about 7 or something, maybe about 10 years ago, I started experimenting with female impersonation and trying to develop a passable presentation with the voice and the mannerisms and the clothing and the makeup and so forth. With some of my personal inspirations, Gray Phillips, definitely, Jimmy James, who's a Marilyn Monroe impersonator, and then there's some videos that I just go back to. Can I just real be personal and just calm and not so excited? Just share. There are some videos on YouTube that I go back to for inspiration, like when I'm getting dressed. There are some Geraldo and some Donahue ones, and some Sally Jesse Raphael ones. These are talk show hosts, the talk shows at the time they would have on different guests. And they were fabulous. There's one Geraldo one where he had on guests in connection with La Cage aux Folles, which unfortunately, sadly, recently I discovered no longer exists. But there was a, let me see, a Judy Garland, I think Judy Garland, yeah, Judy Garland impersonator, and then there was a Lauren Bacall impersonator, and then like in order of presentation, Lauren Bacall impersonator, and then I think next was the Marilyn Monroe impersonator. And this person, but this person was remarkable. And it's not like drag, what I would call drag, which would be like drag queen. I don't go for the clown stuff and the exaggerated makeup and so forth. That's why I say female impersonator rather than drag queen. This guy looked incredible. Maybe I can add, I know I can, maybe I will add a link to this video because I love it so much. It's on one of the Geraldo, it's from Geraldo, the daytime TV show. And then after that was an impersonator Colombian impersonator who started off doing Marilyn Monroe. And then, I wish I had the skill and the material. A lot of this is costly to really do it right. But next to like the Marilyn Monroe impersonator came out first, and then in the clip you don't really see, I'll just say, her performance. And then she sits down, and then next comes the Madonna, the one from Colombia, dressed up as Madonna, and the Oh my gosh, the outfit is magnificent. I mean, they were cracking jokes. He sits down and then Geraldo gets into the act. Like everybody's probably thinking the same thing. Geraldo, he okay, to give you some sense, I'll say she, but it's really he. She is wearing she comes out doing a performance of a lip sync performance of Vogue, the song Vogue, and wearing the large bra. You know what I'm talking about, the pointy bra, characteristic Madonna pointy bra, and like a black leotard, and then her thighs are showing under pantyhose and probably some good, really excellent body sculpting material. And then like in the nether regions, purely flat and thin and just well proportioned. Oh my gosh. And so she sits down, and then Geraldo says, donde, from where, I guess, donde, something, from where did you come from? And then she says Colombia, and then he says something like Levitt, and he stands up and he does this pose, and then Geraldo walks over to, I think, a cameraman or some staff person, and then says, "So where do you think?" And everyone, and then he says, "Probably in the dresser, so on the dresser," and then like everybody's thinking, and I don't know if the impersonator knows that is fluent that much to catch what they're saying, but I'm sure she's smiling. So that's what fascinates me. I am also fascinated by stage illusion. So this, excuse the expression, this marries nicely with female impersonation. So it's videos like that, and Gray Phillips, who developed a well, I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I was fascinated by Scarlet Business and the ones I just mentioned here, and just the art form itself. Um, so I developed this look over time, and it's something creative. Um, I've wanted to be a professional, creative screenwriter and director, basically follow in the footsteps of sort of in the follow in the path of Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Jim Henson. And so this has been one creative outlet for me. I'd burst if I didn't have some kind of creative outlet. So, um, as I'm driving in the car a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, um, I would go, just to practice a female voice and, or feminine voice, and it occurred to me, well, music, this is the same practice that professional singers use. The range, musical range, the tone range, whatever you call it. And so I thought, gee, I'd written some poetry in high school to attract somebody, and I have these wonderful thoughts and insights, and I want to be a writer, professional writer. Maybe I could create music, and I love it. Kind of enlivened, rejuvenated this interest that I've had in 1980s music. I was born in '75, so in the midpoint of the decade, I was 10 years old. So basically, my childhood I consider '80s. Even though it kind of overlapped with late '70s. But anyway, people don't really remember H5 and before that well. So anyway, I wondered if maybe I could develop Samantha Bahar as a music talent. So that's the short version of it. So I'd been wanting to connect and network with drag queens and people who could basically give me, let me have a platform, let me develop. There's a term in the drag community, drag mother and drag daughter, and that simply means mentor mentee. So and mentor also being somebody who could help you get gigs or let you push you towards the next step and so forth. I really wanted that. I also wanted that for screenwriting too. Um, I'm a flower that hasn't been able to bloom fully, lacking the resources to bloom fully. Um, I'm struggling to bloom. So anyway, so I went to this thing downtown called Song and Dance, and dressed up. And fortunately, this friend of mine drove me there, and he performed. He just signed up. I needed somebody to drive me, and because I my car was repossessed. So he drove, and on the way, he said that he signed up for a free ticket too, and he's also performing. He signed up. Yeah, I'll perform. I'd like to perform. So, um, it was a great night. Unfortunately, I got sick because I drank an alcoholic beverage on an empty stomach because I didn't want to eat, and have to shed all that clothing. It'd be kind of really, really awkward. So I didn't eat it's a bad move, I guess. I didn't eat, except something like an apple, or maybe, I forget. No, I whatever it is. I think I had a little bit of a little bit of. I think I drank a little bit of something, soda or something, tiny little bit of something. Aside from that, I didn't eat anything since the day before. So, that I had a Sunny D with vodka. Um, I should not have had that. I mean, they practically opened, like, I just suggested, oh, maybe, I'd be interested, maybe something, and then all of a sudden it's opened and given to me. Like, what am I supposed to do? So, well, I'll know for next time. So you don't want to really hear about that. So, um, I didn't perform, but I was wearing here. I My friend took pictures, and I wanted to also see if I can do to share my screen somehow. Now, I haven't been doing this um, because since I've been doing these live shows. Really, there's a program, I can't remember the name of it, that I had been using, but for whatever reason, I gave up trying to use that, and just it's easier. Oh, I think it's because the size of my computer, that's it. The size of my computer hard drive was low. So I decided just to keep doing it by doing that. Here's what I'll pin a comment below. At least this video get some comment, right? I'll pin it below and include the photos that my friend had taken. But I was wearing a nice dark black, like, top with floral designs. It was like a low. It wasn't buttoned. It was like somewhat of a low cut collar with nice jewelry and brown hair, and makeup done hopefully pretty well. My girlfriend. This is a nice project. I want to work on this with my girlfriend too, to improve my. She's going to be a mentor too, makeup mentor. She loves makeup. It's one of the things that attracted me to her. Plus her interest in Halloween and costumes and so forth. We're great. We're such a great match. I love you. All right. So then I had a green skater skirt and naked legs, and well shaven. My arms and legs were well shaven. Like, I wasn't going for Mr. Drag Queen with the beard or something. No, I really put in effort to look the part. It was really nice when we were walking. So my friend parked the car, and then we had to turn around the corner, and there were two guys there, older guys. I'd say, well, they had beards, and they like facial hair, and they looked older. So I'd say like maybe 50s or 60s, something like that. Um, and my friend tried out his song for them, and then I was standing there, and I was acting, like, trying to act believably female, like playing a role, authentic role of how would a woman, what would a woman's mannerisms be. And I don't know if they could probably see through the costume, but it felt so nice because one of them said she liked it, or she caught on, or something like that, and that made me really feel nice. Again, I don't know whether they could tell that I was a guy dressed up. Probably. I mean, my it's I think otherwise, I think I would resemble a woman, not a petite, skinny woman, but granted, how many of us are skinny and petite? But um, a woman, but the face I'll have to work on in terms of makeup and contouring and so forth, blending. But I could go on about that, but it felt really nice. So when we were walking, and I'm walking in a feminine posture. I guess from what I've read, women have their shoulders down; they're not up so much; they're down in their back, and then whereas guys walk with their arms like up front with their chests, women walk with more with their hips. So I was doing not in a sachet way, but just noticeable enough that um, the hips bounce back and forth a bit. So and the legs crossed forward a bit. So anyway, we came in and I didn't perform, but the key thing is I wanted to network. I wanted to show myself off to the host who is a drag queen and who does promote events like this. So from what I've heard, it's done every month. It's called Slay Ground, and then there are other events, similar events like I think Fresh Face is the name of another one. But anyway, so I want to put together something. I want to perform, and I started working with Gemini AI, in dialogue in a chat, explaining what I'd like to do and back and forth. And when I come up with a new idea, it gives me a response back like, "Oh, that's a good idea," and I could ask. This is a good way of talking with somebody when nobody's when you're alone, you don't have anybody else to really converse with about on a topic. I open up Gemini and I say, "What do you think about this?" and so forth, and what key people could I contact? Um, so that's useful. So I developed a whole chat that I'm going to put the transcript of which I'm going to put into another one, Claude AI, which is more in terms of the AI chatbots, is more in tune with human nuance because Gemini is better at structural understanding, and basically more like factual basis, but Claude is better at assessing human emotion, human reaction, and so forth. So, um, so I'm going to put that in there. But I was developing like what would sometimes I would ask it like how would Madonna promote this event? Because what I want to do is have a what I started off with was performing as these other performers would get up on stage. When it comes my turn, I would come up on stage and perform my thing. But I really want to. There's so many songs that I put together. You may remember that I had talked about my discography. I came up with about 5 albums worth, maybe seven, something like 5 albums worth of material. It hasn't been recorded yet. I must develop my singing voice. I must develop my singing skills, and that's where I envy Gray Phillips, who has billed himself herself as the real live Tootsie. Who couldn't get a job as singing as a man, so dressed up and sang with his female sounding voice as a woman, and it worked. Um, Whereas I want to, and I have these great ideas, and I think my reflections, my verses, the way I go about writing a song, what I want to express could easily match more with a woman than with a man, I think. Maybe that's probably just my subjective thought, but I'm more introspective and um so more emotional and more capable of expressing my emotions, I think, and that would come through in the music. And plus this autogynephilia or whatever, I love dressing up as a woman. So anyway, I want to make that a thing. And so in discussing this AI chatbot, the Gemini chat session, I figured uh, if I do more than 2 songs, it's gonna dominate dominate the event for everybody else, from and over everybody else. So it really belongs in its own event, which would be great for me because I want to do something like Lady Gaga might do or Madonna might do. Um, and I also mentioned to it that I have a background in real background in excuse me, real background in screenwriting and movies, which could carry over into theater. And what it mentioned was something I sort of already knew, but it's nice confirmation that um, Madonna would incorporate theatrical aspects. I mean, who doesn't know Madonna would incorporates theatrical aspects, and that I know she wanted to be an actress and she got into music. I guess it's easier perhaps to go into music than it is into theater and so forth, which which goes back to what I was talking about, where I wanted to go into film and TV and so forth. Um, but I figured maybe music is easier to get into, so to express your ideas. So I envision right now. I already sent the email to the host and promoter of these events. Um, his name is Aria, or his drag name is Aria V. I forget his real name. Um, I'll just say she. Aria V has drag daughters, or at least one drag daughter, and I want to be another drag daughter. I want the mentorship, and I want to be able to network and so forth, build myself up. So I thought of two interesting songs of from memory. Um, I went through this discography I was telling you about, drawn, of songs drawn from my fantasies and my personal past, my personal experiences, and which ones really came out immediately. Well, there's one about confusion 30 years ago with someone. I'm going to change the gender. I'm going to address it the way a 1980s song would, like you addressing you directly. Um, but I'm going to phrase it as though I'm a woman or I was a girl at the time, and but the emotions and the experiences I want to talk about are genuine. So the person I'm singing about, I will keep very uh coded isn't even a good word. It's just like a reflection of my thoughts and feelings. I'm going to be careful about what I say about this other person, not reveal any details like identifying details. I want to sing about my experience through this relationship and so forth. So then the other song I have in mind is I like mermaids. I'm attracted to mermaids. I have been since about 1984, with that episode of Riptide and Splash. I didn't see Splash in the theater, but there were several mermaid things around 1984, 85, and so forth. I interestingly, um, so I want to sing. I want to sing where I could make a music video where I'm dressed as a mermaid, using special effects and so forth. Again, stage illusion and trick photography and costuming and so forth. Um, and I also thought, um, well, I don't want to make it seem just like a sexy mermaid video or something. Um, a lot of times in mermaid movies, mermaid songs or stories, um, will the other person respect you? Like, what if they didn't know that I was a mermaid? What if this guy that I'm singing to, what if he didn't know? And I thought maybe that would play into a female mindset. Like, would you accept me for my fault, even with my faults? Like, I know enough about this is interesting psychologically doing this, trying to sing from a woman's point of view and have it come across authentically. Any female viewers right now, what do you think? Comment below or wherever they have it now. Comment, um, what do you think? Are there aspects in songs that that don't capture authentic female mindset? Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention that there's a documentary series that you can find on YouTube. It's called "Boys Will Be Girls." I think it's about 5 parts, and each episode 5 episodes long, and it's a reality TV series of about 5 episodes, and, it follows the path of 3, almost 4, but one of them backed out, 4 young guys who have had some musical experience and stage performance experience, but they dress up, and the trick is to make them come across as women, and one of them, they really poke fun at this guy. It's not his fault really, but he looks a lot like Farrell, not Terry Farrell, Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell. He looks a lot like Will Ferrell to me, and um, he even himself makes fun of the fact that you're going to pull off a miracle if I seem anywhere female, come across as anywhere female presenting. But no, no, it's funny. There's some lighthearted moments, and I go back to it just to remind myself of what aspects would you need to work on? What elements are needed to really pull off having a female impersonation musical act? And they go through creating a music video. They go and then finally going on stage and performing with lights down. And before that, there's going out for the first time publicly, and then before that, getting costumes and the dancing choreography and so forth. It's really interesting. I wish the episodes, I wish there were more episodes in this limited series. It's called Boys Will Be Girls, and so it's a British thing, British production. So any English speaker should be able to enjoy it. So anyway, where was I? So I want to develop this persona of a the mindset. Oh yes, the song. So I have had I know I have had elements about myself, and I'm fully aware that women have mentioned, or they seem to recognize their flaws or faults, like body fault, like I'm too skinny, I'm too fat in certain places, I'm not as attractive, that despair, perhaps when you measure yourself against Playboy photos and supermodels and so forth. And even I imagine the supermodels really have to work out. It's a whole thing. I mean, people are aware of that. So I thought that would be interesting in context of a mermaid. Like I I'm different. Will you still respect me? Will you still admire me? Will you still love all these things about me if you knew this about me? So I think there's really some universal connection there. So that's another song that I'd like to perform. I don't have singing training yet, but I thought about writing great lyrics and reciting them, and then having melodic backtrack playing while I recite them. Something, because just honestly, I don't trust and I'm aware that I don't have the singing background. Although I too, I potentially could have a good singing voice, and my girlfriend says she enjoys when I sing, songs that I'm familiar with. Um, I think it would be perhaps a little too much to learn um, develop the melody and learn and train and practice. I think that would take longer than I want. So I still have a mermaid tail, a silicone mermaid tail. I can use that as a prop. So That'd be interesting to do as a will perform my performance in a what's not amateur hour, like an open mic. It's basically an open mic night. So I can do that, but I'm hoping that I can promote a future event. If the audience reaction is good, um, and sufficiently good, hopefully maybe I can convince Aria V to let me have a night where I can really um, have a QR code because I have a website and I want to show you that website here. How can I share? Can I share this? I'm trying to figure out somehow where I can share screen. Aha! This I figured there would be something like this. All right. So, select a tab to share. Okay. All right. So this is I told you this is real time. I'm going to put in my website so you know it's an actual website actually exists. I haven't been blowing smoke up your you know what. All right. There. Hopefully, I don't seem like I'm talking out of my whatever, and you can actually see this. Enter the fantasy. I worked on this a little while back. Let me just I've talked enough about my plans, my stage plans. I want to take you through this website. So here's home. And this is powered by here, let me fourth wall so you can see at the bottom. I I created these links and so forth myself. Of course, obviously, Fourth Wall has tools. I'll give a little plug. You too can set up a Fourth Wall account. But see, there's business inquiries, contact at vvproductions.meda, um, merch support. This because I talked before about going to this website and this better work. This is better work. I don't yeah, this is that's not the right spot to go to. I talk about going to oh, that's merch support, that's why. I want to get to the actual store here. I talk about the stuff that you can go to and shop on my site, but I don't actually show this. Well, here, about the creator. Here, answer me with my blustering hair, whatever you want to call it. And there's my bio. And here's my alter ego. I want to get better pictures than that. That's another thing. I have 4 modeling agency potential groups to apply to send good photos. If I could, I'd love to model as either one, potentially as Samantha, but I don't know how convincing I could be. I'm told that my girlfriend and a few other people. I think that I have good looks. In this economy, you work with what you have, right? um, this is so great. I confirm that I can be able to share these screens. So, all right. So hopefully I can then, soon I can mention that I have performed at da 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 da, just to make me seem more legitimate. Not that I'm not legitimate, but finally I can show you this does actually exist. You can see the prices here. See, I told you it's apparel. I forgot about the hat, and there's the mug I keep mentioning. And down here, logo t-shirt, mug, Bella and canvas, basically different forms of shirts, a cap, foam trucker, what they call a trucker cap. I guess you have to nickname it something, the style something. There's a hoodie, there's the mug, and you may notice that they all have the same logo, which is my YouTube channel logo. It's also connected with, see, there's the back of it, the front and back. It's also connected with my brand, my company, which is a DBA right now, but that's legitimate enough. Visionary Ventures. So there's my shop. me go back to it. Let me go back so I can see myself again. Oh wow. Oh, that's what it looks like. I haven't done this before. I haven't shared. I might as well just keep on doing this. Remember, it's called vvproductions.meda. And I don't know if this will go away, but that's fine. I'll keep it up there. I don't know how to turn it. Oh, stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so I'll just stop for a moment. There. Okay, good, good. Wow, I'll be able to do so much more with that share screen feature. All right, so wish me luck on that. I'll give you more. Oh, so the QR code. Yeah, I'll give a QR code that will connect me to this, connect anybody to that website where they can find more information. And I want to prime that. I know, like Lady Gaga and Madonna, what would they do? Well, they would have a special selection. In addition to the YouTube channel logo on stuff, there would be a special collection about like a tour or something or other. And if I perform somewhere, an event, like I have in mind right now, like 8 songs over 2 acts. And it's like a theatrical thing where there's a voiceover bit between act 1 and act 2, or maybe between each song and so forth, between 2 songs and so forth. So I want to make it in the style of something, of course, given my capabilities and resources, but something along the lines of what you would see in Madonna or Lady Gaga's productions. All right, so that having been said, I want to move on to my other thing. The from my mom would say, from the sublime to the ridiculous. No, 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 no. This is not ridiculous at all. I want to talk about these things I found in Genesis and what I learned in the book of Genesis. Now, keep in mind, I put this into Claude AI, and it helped write this, but I was instrumental with like working with it in order to generate this. So just to be upfront about that. There's a moment in the Eden story that almost nobody catches. God describes the trees of the garden and uses 2 specific words in a specific order. Then, a few verses later, Eve looks at the forbidden tree and uses almost the same words, but the order is flipped. And that flip, these 3 words reversed, contains what may be the most philosophically sophisticated idea in the entire Torah. And when you start pulling that thread, it leads somewhere unexpected, because it turns out that the Eden narrative isn't the only place where the Torah encodes a complete philosophical system into a handful of words and numbers. The genealogy that follows the expulsion from Eden, the 10 generations of Genesis 5, from Adam to Noah, does the same thing. Okay, I move down. Okay, let's start with the vocabulary, because the Torah is precise in a way that English translations almost always lose. Genesis 3:6, the moment Eve looks at the forbidden fruit, uses 2 distinct Hebrew words for desire. The first is ta'ava, from the root. And now I have to explain. These are 3 letters to spell out the Hebrew word. Consonant in Hebrew, consonants or basic letters are written, but the vowels are not typically written, especially in the Torah. So these 3 letters are Aleph, Vav, He. This is visceral, internal craving, the hunger that rises from inside you. You feel a lack, a void, and your eyes go searching for something to fill it. It moves outward from you toward the world. The second word is nechmad, from the root letters chet, mem, dalet, the same root as hamad, to covet. This is desire triggered by the object itself. Something possesses inherent value, beauty, status, and that quality reaches out and pulls you towards it. It moves inward from the world towards you. So the earlier word ta'ava would be from you towards the world. And here, this word nechmad is moving inward from the world towards you. Classical commentators, Rashi, Sforno, and others, notice that both words appear together in Genesis 3:6, right at the critical moment. The verse tells us three things about the tree. One, it was good for food. Two, it was a ta'aveh to the eyes, or ta'ava, excuse me. And three, it was nechmad, excuse me, nechmad, desirable to make one wise. Two different words for two different psychological mechanisms. And a YouTube commentator I recently came across pointed out something the commentators gesture at but rarely state directly. This is time to really phrase it directly. This verse is a mirror of an earlier verse, and the mirror is broken. Go back to Genesis 2:9. God causes every tree to grow in the garden, and the text describes them with two qualities: nechmad, pleasant to the sight, then good for food. Seeing first, eating second. Now look at Genesis 3:6 again. Good for food first, then ta'ava to the eyes. Eating first, craving second. Same elements, reversed order, and the word for desire has changed. In God's original design, nechmad, the tree has objective beauty that you appreciate before you consume it. In Eve's fallen perception, ta'ava, the tree radiates her own craving back at her. What the text is encoding in the space of three phrases across two chapters is a complete philosophical account of how desire works when it's healthy and how it collapses. In the original ordering, nechmad, before eating, the world has value, excuse me, the world has value that exists prior to and independent of human appetite. You look at the tree and perceive its beauty. The meaning is out there in the object. Then, having appreciated it, you use it for food. This is a posture of gratitude before consumption. Mind over appetite. The world means something before you want it. In Eve's reversed ordering, eating before ta'ava, something has shifted. Now the tree's value is generated by her desire for it. She looks at the tree and her first thought is utility. It's good for food. Then her eyes become instruments of her appetite, and the craving, ta'ava, floods in to fill the visual field. The philosophical term for this is projection. She is no longer seeing the tree, she is seeing her own hunger reflected back at her by the tree's surface. And here is the razor's edge that the text is walking. This is also the Torah's definition of idolatry. Idolatry isn't believing in the wrong gods. It's the moment when you take a thing in the world, a tree, a statue, a person, and project onto it a meaning that originates inside you. The object becomes a screen for your own desire. And once that happens, you are no longer in relationship with reality. You are in a relationship with yourself, mediated by an object. The serpent didn't create this in Eve. He created the conditions for it. And by the way, I should mention there is no reference to serpent being Satan or whatever. That came later in Christianity. I'm curious myself why the serpent. I've seen some translations of it not being serpent, but being shapeshifter, something like that. All right, the serpent didn't create this in Eve. He created conditions for it. He planted a doubt, a gap, a hunger, and her eyes did the rest. Let's look at what the serpent actually says, because it's easy to miss what's precise about it. He doesn't say, that fruit is delicious, you should eat it. He says, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. But I want to stop on that phrase, knowing good and evil, because the English translation flattens something the Hebrew is doing very carefully. We'll come back to those specific words in the next section. For now, notice the structure of the serpent's argument. He attacks through nechmad, through objective value and strategic desirability. He frames the fruit not as something pleasurable, but as something powerful, a resource, an advantage currently held by God and withheld from humans. And nechmad, the root hamad, carries an almost territorial quality in Hebrew. It's not the word for admiring something beautiful from a distance. It appears in the Ten Commandments as lo tachmod, do not cover your neighbor's house, wife, ox. And it appears in military contexts for seizing spoils from a defeated enemy. The semantic cluster is identifying something highly valuable that belongs to someone else and wanting to take control of it. So when the serpent positions the fruit as nechmad, to make one wise, he is doing something very specific. He is reframing wisdom, the capacity to evaluate reality, as a strategic asset currently monopolized by God. Something that, if acquired, would shift the power differential. Something to be captured, not merely enjoyed. Eve isn't being tempted toward pleasure, she's being invited to make a territorial move. And then, and this is the psychological precision of the text, look at what happens to her desire. You'd expect, if the temptation is framed through nechmad, that nechmad would describe her response, but it doesn't. By the time she looks at the tree, her desire has shifted from nechmad to ta'ava, from strategic acquisition to visceral craving. The intellectual rationalization came first. The serpent gave her a reason. And then, on the back of that reason, the subjective hunger flooded in and took over. This is a remarkably modern psychological observation. We assume desire precedes rationalization. The text suggests it can go the other direction entirely. You are given an argument, and the craving assembles itself around it. The appetite follows the strategy, not the other way around. All right. Before we go further, I need to stop and address what may be the single most consequential mistranslation in the entire Torah, and I wanted to talk about this. The tree is called Etz HaDa'at Tov Vara, the tree of the knowledge of Tov and Ra, in English, good and evil. That translation isn't wrong exactly, but it's so loaded with centuries of moral theology that it obscures what the Hebrew is actually doing. So let's take a look at both words carefully. Tov. First, Tov. We've already established that Tov is the evaluative word God uses 7 times in Genesis 1. But notice how broad its range actually is. When God says it is not Tov for man to be alone, Genesis 2:18, no translator renders it as it is not morally good for man to be alone. Everyone instinctively understands it means it is not fitting, it is not complete, it is not what it should be. That's the actual semantic range of Tov: functional, fitting, appropriate to its purpose, working as it should. It's an aesthetic and functional judgment as much as an ethical one. When God surveys creation and calls it Tov, remember, creates this, sees and says it's Tov, creates this, sees it, says it's Tov. The meaning is closer to this is exactly right. This is what it should be than to any pronouncement about morality. Tov is the word for a good year, a good harvest, a pleasing sacrifice, a well-made thing, a beautiful person, a fitting arrangement. It describes things that work, things that fit, things that are as they should be. Now we get to Ra. Okay. Ra is the antonym, clearly the antonym, but again, not primarily in the moral sense English imports into it. The root meaning of Ra is broken, dysfunctional, harmful, displeasing, out of order. Pharaoh's ugly cows in Genesis 41 are raw cows, not evil cows, not bad cows, thin and sickly. A raw year is a famine year, a year that doesn't work. A raw eye in Proverbs is a stingy or hostile eye. Rotten figs are raw figs. Raw can mean moral evil. It can certainly be used that way, but that's a subset of its meaning, not its core. Its core is the opposite of Tov. Whatever is not fitting, not functional, not as it should be, whatever is broken, harmful, disordered, what the tree is actually named, the tree of Da'at tov v'ra is not at its root the tree of moral knowledge. It is the tree of the knowledge of what is fitting and what is broken, what works and what doesn't, what is as it should be and what is out of order. So you can see already this fascinating and elegant um, placement of that tree early in the whole five books, the whole Bible. The very beginning, like Adam and Eve's early experience with life, um, is the tree of knowledge, determination of like what's fitting and what's broken. And that reframes the entire Eden narrative. God's concern isn't that Adam and Eve will learn a catalog of virtues and sins. The concern is that they will acquire the faculty of evaluation itself, the ability to stand outside reality, observe it, and judge it, to say, this is tov, this is ra, this belongs, this doesn't. In the Hebrew understanding, that faculty is a divine prerogative. When God calls creation tov, God is exercising a function that requires complete knowledge of what a thing is for, knowledge only the creator possesses. When humans eat from the tree and acquire da'at meaning knowledge, tov, ra, fitting and broken, they are or not fitting. They are claiming the right to evaluate, to define what is fitting and what is broken, without having God's vantage point from which to do so accurately. This is why the serpent's promise is so precise. You will be like God, knowing Tov and Ra, not you will know right from wrong in the catechism sense. You will have the divine evaluative function. You will be able to stand outside and judge. And Da'at deepens this further. Da'at, the knowledge in the tree's name, is not abstract information. It is participatory, intimate knowing. The same word is used for sexual union. Adam knew Eve and she conceived. To know in this sense is to enter into direct, embodied relationship with something, to have it become constitutive of who you are. To eat from the tree of Da'at, Tov, Ra is not to acquire a piece of information. It is to have the evaluative faculty become part of you, inseparable from your consciousness, permanently on. And once that happens, once you can evaluate, you immediately do. The very first thing Adam and Eve do after eating is look at themselves and judge their nakedness. Raw, not fitting, not right, needs to be covered. God's first question after the eating is not, what did you do? It is, who told you that you were naked? I caught that very early on. It's fascinating, which is really, who authorized you to evaluate that? Who pointed out that you were naked? Now loop back to the serpent's temptation. He tells Eve the tree is nechmad, strategically desirable, to make one wise. But what kind of wisdom is this? The Hebrew wisdom tradition runs in two streams. Chokhmah in its, now we're getting into Kabbalah. Chokhmah in its reflective, contemplative mode, and Chokhmah in its practical, strategic mode. The wisdom that gives you capability, mastery, the ability to operate effectively. Chamad leans toward the second. Eve isn't reaching for enlightenment or philosophical understanding. She is reaching for operative power, the capacity to function at a level currently above her, the ability to evaluate, to judge, to define what is Tov and what is Ra, which is currently God's exclusive domain. The serpent's genius is in recognizing that this specific desire, the strategic desire for evaluative power, is the one desire that will work, not pleasure, not beauty, capability. And I should point out that the actual text points out that unique, I think it does say unique amongst, there's no other creature like this amongst the creatures created by God. It's arumim. I think I have the right word for it. Arumim, which is crafty and snaky, basically. And that is a homonym, meaning it's spelled differently, but it sounds the same as the word for nakedness. So I wanted to mention that. Um, and I think the author of the Torah was intentionally doing that. Um, the tool, I still wonder why it's a serpent that was chosen to be the what who tells Eve and such as. Anyway, the tool she stole, right? The tool she stole from God is the first tool she uses against herself. All right. We noted earlier that Eve uses the word tov, God's own evaluative word, when she looks at the tree and decides it is good for food. She is already, before she eats, exercising the very faculty the tree promises. The serpent's argument has already activated it. The eating is almost an afterthought, a ratification of a judgment already made. Sin in the Torah's account rarely presents itself as chaos. It presents itself as legitimate categories: tov, raw, valid evaluation, applied without the authority or the vantage point to use them accurately. She isn't abandoning the framework, she's claiming it. And the word for that claim, chamad, is the same word the 10th commandment will later use for the act of coveting what belongs to another. The Eden story is the etiology of lo tachmod, the first covetousness. And what was coveted was not a neighbor's ox, it was the mind of God. Now I want to connect the vocabulary we just unpacked to something that happens just before the eating, something in Genesis 2, Genesis chapter 2, verses 24 to 25, that sets up the fall philosophically. The text says they are one flesh, and immediately after that, they were both naked and they were not ashamed. Why does the Torah put these two statements side by side? Because nakedness without shame is the narrative signal for a particular state of being. It means there is no internal observer watching you from outside. There is no self consciousness. Subject and object haven't separated yet. You are fully inside your experience rather than watching yourself have it. Then they eat. Then Adam and Eve eat. And the very first consequence, before God says a word, before any punishment is pronounced, is this: their eyes were opened and they knew they were naked. They didn't become physically separate, they became psychologically separate. The birth of self consciousness is the separation. The moment you can observe yourself, part of you is already standing outside, watching. You are no longer fully unified with your experience with each other or with the world. And notice what da'at means: the knowledge they gained from the tree of da'at, tov v'ra. Knowledge, yes, but also distinction, separation, the faculty that divides one thing from another. And to eat from the tree of distinction is to become a being capable of distinction, including the distinction between self and other. Between self and other, self and world, self and God. The one flesh becomes two, not because of marriage law, because of epistemology. Here, I want to flag something that Moshe Klein pointed out, the author Moshe Klein, who wrote a wonderful work called Before Chapter and Verse. You can buy his book. In fact, I'll post it down below. I'm a member of Amazon. I should still be a member of the Amazon affiliate program, which means that you can put in a code. If you look at, I'm not sure if you just have to look at it or if you need to buy it, but I would get some kind of benefit from you going to look at the book to buy the book. I want to mention that. I have to mention that up front. I'm obligated, but I think it's a really, really good book. And I'll see if I can find an Amazon link to put it in there, to put in the description below. Here, I want to flag something that Moshe Klein pointed out, and that has significant structural implications. Throughout Genesis 1, the 6 days of creation, only Elohim appears, the universal cosmic creator, the architect of order. In Genesis 2 and 3, the garden narrative, the text uses Yud He Vav He Elohim. The compound, the two names together. This is unusual enough that classical source critics, the scholars who divided Genesis into J and P documents, this is talking about the documentary hypothesis, that there was a J author and a P author, one using a J, actually J author, a P author, and an E author. J meaning J author who wrote all the stuff that has God referred to as Yud He Vav He, and then a priestly author who used Elohim as God's name, and also an E author who used Elohim as God's name. That's the documentary hypothesis. I dispute that. I have material. I want to go get a PhD, and I'm planning on going for a master's thesis, a master's program. But beyond that, I want to go perhaps Cornell and get a PhD in precisely this refutation, an alternative argument against the documentary hypothesis, and I think a better picture. That there was one author, or at least it was one authorial effort to write the Torah and then organizing the rest of the Tanakh, which would be what Christians call the Old Testament. All right, so the compound, the two names together. This is unusual enough that classical source critics, the scholars who divided Genesis into J and P documents, struggled to account for it because it disrupts their clean separation. That clean sense that J wrote this stuff and P wrote that stuff. But there's a more interesting reading available. Elohim is the name of God as cosmic principle, universal, transcendent. So this is Moshe Klein, what Moshe Klein is pointing out in his book. Elohim is the name of God as cosmic principle, universal, transcendent, the God who speaks the world into being from a distance. Remember, that's the God of chapter 1. Or I should say the facet of God in chapter 1. Now we get to chapters 2 and 3. Yud He Vav He is the relational name, the name of direct address, intimate covenant, personal presence, the God who walks in the garden in the cool of the day. The compound Yud He Vav He Elohim appears precisely at the moment when the infinite enters into particular relationship with a specific creature, when the cosmic architect becomes a personal God who plants a garden, forms a man from dust, breathes into his nostrils. The two names together mark a transitional zone, the place where transcendence and immanence are held together simultaneously, where the God of all creation, Elohim, is also the God who calls Yud He Vav He, who calls out, "Where are you?" And when the expulsion happens, the compound dissolves. The unified interface between those two aspects of divinity and between humanity and divinity has ruptured. The garden, which was the place of their conjunction, is closed. So it's about separation. It's very much about separation in this Genesis story. One more thread, and I should mention, to my knowledge, this is the only time in which you see Yud He Vav He Elohim used as, or appearing as, the entity's name. Elsewhere, you see either Yud He Vav He or Elohim referred to, but not this. I think this is the only time where it happens as one. One more thread before we turn to Genesis 5. All right, I hope you love Genesis 5. God says in Genesis 2, verse 17, Bayom achalcha mimenu mot tamut. In the day of your eating from it, dying, you will die. The serpent says, you will not die. They eat. They don't die that day. So who was right? The standard answer is spiritual death. Spiritual death. And that's not entirely wrong, but the Hebrew is more precise than that. Mot tamut is the infinitive absolute construction. Mot refers to death. In fact, there was a god of death called Mot in, I think it's Canaanite. I'm pretty sure it's Canaanite vocabulary. So it's like die, emphasis. Mot tamut. A grammatical form that in Hebrew intensifies process. Oops, I hope I wasn't, I just realized I'm on YouTube here. Oh, well. A grammatical form that in Hebrew intensifies process, not just certainty. It doesn't just mean you will certainly die. It means something closer to dying, you will die, or you will enter a dying. Death becomes not an event, but a condition, a trajectory, a mode of being you enter the moment you eat. And this connects back to everything we've discussed. To be fully individuated, separate, self conscious, aware of the boundary between self and world is already to be the kind of being that can die. Mortality and ego consciousness arrive together. You cannot have the faculty of distinction without the distinction being between being and non being becoming real to you. The serpent was accurate. They didn't drop dead. God was accurate. Something irreversible had begun. They were now mortal, not as punishment, but as consequence. The inevitable result of becoming the kind of being who knows the difference between self and other, inside and outside, now and not yet. See, when I was reading Genesis, I never picked up the impression that it would be a punishment. It's a consequence. It's like um, God was saying, "Don't touch that hot pan. You're going to burn yourself." And it's not like God then causes them, punishes them by having them feel hurt. It's that the pan is hot. Don't do that. Um, Let me pull the Eden material together before we move on. The Eden narrative is not primarily a story about disobedience and punishment. It is a philosophical account of differentiation and what differentiation costs. Before the eating, unity, one flesh, no shame. God walking in the garden, the divine name held together. The tree perceived with appreciation before appetite. The world meaning something before you want it. After the eating, separation, self from other, human from divine, life from its source, the name divided, the garden closed, appetite preceding appreciation, the world meaning only what your hunger projects onto it. I'm thinking of breatharianism. Anyway, all right. Go look up breatharianism. Breatharianism. It's interesting. Okay. The flip in 3 words, but don't practice it. Please don't practice it. Our hospitals are packed as it is. Um, the flip in 3 words, nechmad becoming ta'ava, appreciation becoming craving, outside in becoming inside out, is the literary signature of this entire transition. And the question the text leaves open, which I think is the question it intends to leave open, is whether this was fall or development, tragedy or necessity. I'm wondering the same thing. Because you cannot be in covenant relationship with God without being a self. This becomes very Kabbalistic. Those of you who study Kabbalah know the levels of the parts of the soul. The soul is has segments, and there, if I remember correct, taking a pause from this, in Kabbalah anyway, Jewish mysticism, the soul most connected with the body is the nefesh, and then at some point there's the nefesh. Oh boy, nefesh, and then there's one like referring to breathing, and then there's a higher, I want to say chokmah, it's not that. And then there's one above that, which is chaya, which means creature. And there's one even higher than that. And you're approaching union with God so that you are, I don't want to say you are God, but like there's no distinction. Like you just become absorbed into like part of your soul is God. If you can imagine that, and then becomes more and more separate. The segments embody more and more of a separateness from God as you go into this physical state. The soul is a connective; it's one thing, but there are different segments of it, and the lower segments, the ones closer to your physical body, are more separate from God. That's a good way, I think, of expressing it. All right. Okay, because you cannot be in covenant relationship with God without being a self. You cannot love with it without the capacity for distinction. You cannot choose without the knowledge of good and evil. Maybe the garden was not the destination, maybe it was the beginning, which brings us to Genesis chapter 5. All right, I've been wanting to do this for a while. All right. After the expulsion from Eden, Genesis gives us a genealogy, 10 generations from Adam to Noah. Each entry follows the same formula: how old the patriarch was when he fathered his son, how many years he lived after that, and his total lifespan. So there are three numbers. Interestingly, Genesis 11 has only two numbers. It's very interesting. Why? I mean, it's just curious. Like, I'm wondering that too. Why? um, most readers either, and this gets consistent too, most readers either take these numbers literally. Adam really did live 900, excuse me, Adam really did live 930 years, or dismiss them as mythological inflation. Both responses miss what's actually happening. Because these numbers are a clock, a precisely engineered mathematical sophisticated clock designed to count down to a single destination, the year of the flood. Before we get into the mechanism, I want to address the manuscript question because it matters for what follows. The numbers in Genesis 5 are not uniform across all versions. The Masoretic text, the Hebrew manuscript tradition preserved in documents like the Leningrad Codex, housed in St. Petersburg, and confirmed by manuscripts in the British Library, give us one set of numbers. This is the text that underlies virtually all modern English translations. Then you have the Septuagint, the Greek translation made in Alexandria, probably in the 3rd century BCE, gives us a different set. The LXX chronology, LXX means 70, and it's a shortened version of saying the Septuagint, because there were 70 so-called, I think it was written in a letter or something, the so-called 70 scholars who translated the Hebrew into the Greek and called it the Septuagint. They just call it the 70. The LXX 70 chronology is roughly 600 years longer than the Masoretic. And the LXX itself has two variants: standard Septuagint and a second tradition that inserts an additional figure, a second Canaan between Arpachshad and Shelah in Genesis 11, adding yet another generation to the post-flood timeline. The difference between the Masoretic and LXX antediluvian totals is approximately 586 years. Much of that gap comes from a systematic pattern. In the LXX, most patriarchs father their sons 100 years later than in the Masoretic. In other words, there's a difference of 100 years in terms of, age when giving, I don't want to say giving birth, begat, the age of the father when the child was born. There's a difference of 100 years just about consistently between the Masoretic and the Septuagint. Adam begets Seth at 130 in the Masoretic, at 230 in the Septuagint. Seth begets Enosh at 105 in the Masoretic and at 205 in the Septuagint. One of the remaining discrepancies, about 20 years, can be explained. Now, that's strictly in the Septuagint. Remember, I told you there were two variants. One of them is off by 20 years from the other. There's a discrepancy between them in one single point, but 20 years in one of the people, one of the descendants. One of the remaining discrepancies, about 20 years, can be explained by a single scribal copying error. The Hebrew letters Vav and Zayin are visually similar. As I've also read, this could have also happened in Greek, between the two Greek letters. But a scribe misreading one for the other in a single numeral would produce exactly the same kind of discrepancy we see in Lamech's timeline, Lamech's lifespan. I should also mention that in Gematria, or in just the style of how letters are used in Hebrew and in Greek, they didn't have specific number symbols. they used letters of the alphabet. So that's where gematria comes in. Aleph, the first letter, also means one. Bet means two. Gimel means three, and Dalet means four, and so on. So gematria is not just some playful thing, playful game. It's used in Greek and Hebrew as a form of writing numbers. Um, has interesting consequences or interesting implications and solutions for what 666 or 616 means in the Book of Revelations. I personally think it points to Kaiser Neron or Caesar Nero, in terms of how you spell it, either in Hebrew or in Greek. 666 in some version, or 616 as appears in other versions. One is Greek, the other is Roman. All right, so, or did I say Greek? One is Greek, one is Hebrew. Sorry. All right, a scribe misreading one for the other in a single numeral would produce exactly the kind of discrepancy we see in Lamech's lifespan: 777 in the Masoretic and 753 in the LX, in the 70 LXX. One letter, 24 years, centuries of chronological controversy. This is not the kind of variation you get from oral tradition. This is manuscript transmission, copying errors, scribal decisions, editorial interventions. We're dealing with a written text managed by scribes with a literary agenda. Keep that in mind as we look at what the Masoretic numbers actually do. Now I need to introduce a parallel tradition because you cannot understand Genesis 5 without it. Berosus was a Babylonian priest who lived in the 3rd century BCE, or as Christians would say, BC, and wrote a history of Babylon for a Greek audience. His work survives only in fragments quoted by later writers. Oh my gosh, how awful that is. At least we have the fragments anyway. But one of the things he preserved was the Babylonian king list before the flood. 10 kings reigning in massive numbers called Sars, each Sar equal to 3,600 years. The total of all 10 reigns is 432,000 years. 10 kings before a great flood, 10 patriarchs before a great flood. Sorry, let me read that again. 10 kings before a great flood, 10 patriarchs before a great flood. The parallel is not subtle, and mainstream scholars have acknowledged it for over a century. Both lists end with a flood hero, Xisuthros in Berosus and Noah in Genesis. Both flood heroes are the 10th in their line. Both are instructed by the divine to build a vessel and preserve life. The question isn't whether Genesis 5 is connected to the Babylonian tradition. It clearly is. The question is how and what the Genesis author did with that inherited material. Here is what gets extraordinary. Let's start with the total before we look at the individual entries. The Masoretic text's Genesis 5 genealogy, when you add all the beginning ages together, produces a total of exactly 1,656 years from Adam to the flood. That number is the destination the entire system was engineered to reach. Now watch what happens when you apply Babylonian mathematical tools to the Babylonian source material. The total of Berosus's king list is 432,000 years. Divide by 60, the base unit of Babylonian mathematics, the same base that gives us 60 seconds, 60 minutes, 360 degrees, and you get 7,200. Now take a lunar solar calendar correction block. 23 years plus 5 leap days equals 8,400 days. Divide by 7, the Hebrew sacred number, and you get 1,200 weeks. Multiply by 72, the number of years it takes the equinoxes to precess 1 degree, one of the most significant astronomical constants in the ancient world, and you get 86,400. Divide by 12, the calendar number, and you return to 7,200. The system closes on itself. And then 23 times 72 equals 1656, the flood year. The same year that the Genesis 5 genealogy hits when you add up all the beginning ages. This is the convergence of Babylonian cosmic time, Hebrew sacred number structure, and astronomical calendar cycles at a single point. The Genesis author was working with the same mathematical vocabulary as the Babylonian scribes: base 60 thinking, sacred 7, solar calendar awareness, the precession constant, and used it to construct a genealogy that encodes the flood year as its mathematical terminus. Um, they set it. They built a clock and they set it to go off at exactly 1656. Now let's look at exactly each patriarch's numbers, how each patriarch's numbers were probably generated. I want to be honest with you about what's established and what's reconstructed. The macro calculation is compelling and mathematically clean. The individual entries involve more interpretive judgment, but the pattern that emerges is consistent enough to be worth laying out. The author appears to have started with a toolkit of sacred numbers: 60, the Babylonian sauce; 120, the double sauce, SOSS; the ideal human lifespan ceiling; 5 and 7, the Hebrew sacred units; 330, a lunar solar calendar correction block; 600, the Neros, Neros, a Mesopotamian astronomical cycle; and 365, the solar year. These weren't looked up in a table, they were the cultural mathematical vocabulary of any educated scribe in the ancient Near East. With those tools in hand, and with the year 1656 as the fixed destination, the genealogy was constructed something like this: Adam, 130. Here, let me share my. Can I share my? I won't try to do that. I'll just read through. Okay, Adam, 130 for begetting year. 800 years after that, totals 930. Those are the three numbers given for each person in Genesis 5. The author starts with the most prestigious Babylonian cosmic number available. 600 is a Neros, the core Mesopotamian astronomical cycle. Add the 330 unit calendar correction block. 600 plus 330 equals 930. That's the ceiling. Adam lives longest because he's the first. For the begetting age, the double sauce is 120, the ideal human ceiling. Add 10 for the number of generations. 120 plus 10 equals 130. The remaining years fall out automatically. 930 minus 130 equals 800, a clean multiple of the 5-year base unit. Next person is Seth, 105, and then after begetting a child at 105, there are 807 years, and the total is 912 years. The author needs a believable step down. Drop the begetting age by 25, you get 105. This is divisible by both 5 and 7 simultaneously, satisfying both number systems at once. For the lifespan, drop 25 from Adam's 930, then add back the Hebrew covenant marker 7. 930 minus 25 plus 7 equals 912. The remaining years, 912 minus 105 equals 807, which is 800 plus 7, visually echoing Adam's 800 and stamping it with the covenant number. Enosh through Mahalalel. The beginning ages continue their descent: 90, 70, 65, each drop using the sacred units. The lifespans hover just below 930, marked with multiples of 5 and punctuated with 7. The remaining years gently rise from 800, tracking the declining beginning ages. So one's descending, one's gently rising, the other's gently rising. By Mahalalel, the 5th generation, the beginning age has hit 65. The author can't keep declining without running out of room. A mathematical problem is approaching. Jared, 162 at beginning age, and 800 years after that equals 962. Here's the pivot. Here the system faces a crisis. If the beginning ages keep declining, 60, 55, 50, 45, the cumulative total won't reach 1656. The author is short by roughly 250 years. The solution is dramatic. Jared's beginning age spikes from 65 all the way to 162. The double sauce is 120, plus a 35-year calendar correction block, plus the 7-year covenant mark. 120 plus 35 plus 7 equals 162. It's a mathematically justified reset within the toolkit. And the lifespan, 962, which means the remaining years are 962 minus 162 equals exactly 800, the same as Adam. This is not an accident. The author chose 962 specifically because it would produce 800 remaining years, echoing the first patriarch, Adam, and signaling that Jared is a structural hinge, the point where the genealogy pivots from its decline narrative into its countdown narrative. All right, now we have a very popular character figure in this list of 10, Enoch. Also, actually in Hebrew, Hanok, which refers to dedication. It's where you get Hanukkah from, or Hanukkah. Enoch, 65 is the begetting age when his wife, his partner beget a child. And then 300 years after that, a total of 365, the solar witness. The seventh position is sacred in Hebrew tradition, and Enoch's numbers break every pattern established so far. His lifespan is 365, the solar year. He doesn't die. The text says God, or Elohim, took him, so his numbers don't need to contribute to the 1656 total the way the others do. He is a cosmic signature embedded in the genealogy. The seventh generation, the solar witness, the one who was taken. His remaining years are 300, exactly 5 sos cycles, 5 times 60, clean. Methuselah, 187 at begetting age, and then 782 years after that, total of 969 is the countdown clock. And the name fits with his, the countdown clock term fits with his name, which could mean death sent, as I recall, something like death sent. This is the most precisely engineered number in the entire system, and it's verifiable with simple arithmetic. Add up all the begetting ages through Enoch, 130 plus 105 plus 90 plus 70 plus 65 plus 162 plus 65. That equals 687. Methuselah is born in year 687. For his death to coincide with the flood year, his total lifespan must be 1656 minus 687 equals 969. And that is exactly what the Masoretic text gives him. Methuselah, the oldest man ever recorded in Scripture, lives precisely as long as he needs to live for his death to trigger the flood. The waters rise the year he dies. The author calculated backwards from 1656 and arrived at 969. That number was not chosen for any other reason. Lamech, begetting age is 182. Number of years after that is 595, a total of 777, the theological stamp. Methuselah fathers Lamech in year 874. That's 687 plus 187. Noah must be born early enough that his 600th year lands on 1656. Noah is born in year 1056. So Lamech's begetting age must be 1056 minus 874 equals 182. But look at what 777 does theologically. Genesis 4 contains a wicked Lamech. In other words, this is from a different lineage. And Moshe Klein gets into this too in his book. Eve produces 2 lineages. One lineage is fascinating. It's a whole other topic I think I covered earlier, some other video, but Eve begets, Eve begets 2 children, Cain and Abel, and she names Cain because she has Cain acquired a man-child with, as if she's partnering with Yud-He Vav-He. And then, of course, there's a story of Cain and Abel where Abel dies, Cain kills Abel, and so forth. And then Cain wanders off and so forth. So then she has another child named Seth or Shet, referring to a seed. And she says something different. She says, I have gotten a seed from Elohim. So notice one lineage has Cain. I have acquired a man child with Yud He Vav He for Cain, and then later I have gotten a seed from Elohim. She received a seed from Elohim to produce Seth, but she like partnered or acquired a man child with Yud He Vav He. It's very interesting. All right, and then there are two lineages, parallel lineages. All right. So anyway, and I think that's where the sons of Elohim and the daughters of Adam and so forth, and then they produce Nephilim, giant. Well, not giants, but Nephilim, and then wickedness and blah blah blah. I think that's where that's coming from. I think it's a marriage between those two lineages, or it's a merging of those two lineages. That's my one of my suspicions. All right, so let's get back to this. I wanted you to know that there are two lineages. So there's a Lamech character in each of the two lineages. But look, so also there are 7 in one lineage. The Cain lineage has 7, and then the Seth lineage, the lineage that has Seth in it, has 10. So it's interesting, 10 and 7. But look at what 777 does theologically. Genesis 4 contains a wicked Lamech, a different Lamech from the line of Cain, who boasts that he will be avenged 77-fold. The righteous Lamech of Genesis 5 is given a lifespan of 777, 7 tripled, as a direct theological reversal of that boast. Same name, opposite signature. Then we get to Noah, 500 at begetting age, and then 450 after, making a total of 950, the final lock. Born in the year 1056, the flood comes in year 1656. The difference is 600. Noah's age at the flood is 600, a Neros, the same Babylonian astronomical cycle that anchored Adam's 930. The system bookends itself. The first patriarch and the last pre-flood patriarch share the same base unit. The total of all 10 begetting ages, 130 plus 105 plus 90 plus 70 plus 65 plus 162 plus 65 plus 187 plus 182 plus 600 equals 1656. All right, so then we move on to the next section. There's one more detail I want to flag before we step back, because it reveals something about how deliberately this genealogy was constructed. Jared, the 6th patriarch, has 800 remaining years after fathering his son. Adam, the first patriarch, has 800 remaining years after fathering his son. In a genealogy where the remaining years range from 300 to 840, the probability of 2 entries sharing an exact match by chance is low. And that's not just any 2 entries, it's the 1st and the 6th, which are the structural pillars of the system. This 800 echo is the author's signature, marking a hidden 2-act structure. Act 1, the decline. Adam through Mahalalel, begetting ages falling, lifespans hovering around 900. The story of human deterioration. Act 2, the reset and countdown. Jared's 800 signals the pivot. Enoch breaks the pattern with the solar year. Methuselah counts down to the exact flood year. Lamech stamps the theological reversal. Noah locks year 1656. The genealogy has a chiastic structure, a mirror, with Adam and Jared as its 2 anchors. That's not numerology, that's literary architecture of a very high order. All right. And I've talked before about what chiastic structure is. You can look it up. It's chiastic. It's a pattern, like a visual pattern in literary verses and form. um, where a line in one part of something mirrors a line later on in another part, and the two they're mirroring images in terms of the statements. Um, One more layer, and then we'll step all the way back. The 10 names of Genesis 5, when you translate the Hebrew meanings in sequence, tell a compressed theological narrative. Um, this part I'm questioning because I've seen it in more Christian circles. Um, Adam, man; Seth, appointed; Enosh, mortal, frail humanity; Kenan, lamentation; Mahalel, praise of God or praise of El; Jared, descent; Enoch, dedicated; Methuselah, his death shall bring; Lamech, the powerful; Noah, rest. Um, I'm still uncertain as to the validity of that, but so I read it through. That is a complete theological statement embedded in the names of the 10 generations. Of course, somebody in Christianity took it and ran with that. I'm going to look at it. I need to look at it more critically, and so just evaluate that. It could have nothing to do specifically with Christianity, like a Christ figure. It could simply have been this concept. The author could have conceivably had this concept of death sent and reset and so forth, not necessarily like referring to a Christ figure later on. All right, so all right. Synthesis and closing. We started with 3 words in Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. The flip from nechmad to ta'ava, from appreciation to craving, from outside in to inside out. A philosophical account of how desire collapses when appetite precedes perception. We found that collapse encoded in the very grammar of the text, the compound divine name dissolving at the expulsion. The infinitive absolute encoding death as process rather than event. The vocabulary theft where Eve uses God's own word tov to authorize transgression. And the full weight of tov and ra. Not a moral catalog, but a divine evaluative faculty. The capacity to judge what is fitting and what's broken, claimed by Eve through an act of hamad, a territorial seizure of what belonged to another. And then we turned to Genesis 5 and found the same precision operating at a completely different scale: 10 generations, 10 Babylonian kings, a clock built backwards from year 1656 using the mathematical vocabulary of ancient Mesopotamia, a chiastic structure hidden in the remaining years, a theological narrative embedded in the meanings of the names. These are not separate texts by separate authors stitched carelessly together. They are parts of a unified literary and philosophical project. The Eden narrative establishes the problem: differentiation, separation, the birth of the self conscious being who can now die. Genesis 5 then encodes the duration of that condition before the first great reset, 1656, calculated with a precision that would require a desk, a scribal tradition, and access to Babylonian astronomical records. The question that drives this channel is simple: how does this text actually work? Or in this case, question that drives not this channel but a certain podcast, the Torah Decoded, and ultimately my book, or my hopefully my book, and a documentary. The question that drives this channel is simple: how does this text actually work? And the answer that keeps emerging from every angle we look is the same. This is the work of a scribal school, people writing with philosophical intent, mathematical sophistication, and literary control that rewards serious attention. Attention that it has, frankly, rarely received. Not because the text isn't worth it, but because we stopped looking closely enough. What strikes me about all of this is not the cleverness of the individual observations, it's that they cohere. The flip in 3 words, the compound divine name, the infinitive absolute, the vocabulary theft, the tov and ra as evaluative faculty rather than moral catalog, the kamad as territorial seizure, the 1656 countdown, the Adam, Jared, 800 Echo, the names encoding the narrative, the Babylonian astronomical constants embedded in the begetting ages. None of these stand alone. They are facets of the same object. All right, let me skip further. So that is basically it. That's what the Tor Decoded is here to do. Um, and that finishes that. Hopefully, you've enjoyed that. You've learned quite a bit. I'm really fascinated by that new insight I found into the Garden of Eden story. So I will place, or I was going to place a note where, a spot where you can a link, hopefully to Amazon, where you can buy Moshe Klein's book. I will get some kind of benefit from it, but it is a really good book. It's not just for me, although I could really need, all the money and all the proceeds will go back into this channel. I really need to build up my bank account, exclusively created as a business account for this channel and for my Visionary Ventures Productions. I will create a link there. I will add a link there. I'll add a comment that includes photos of myself at the sleigh ground. And I hope you like them, and I hope you stay tuned. Go to my website. If you can, buy my merchandise and support me and so forth. Tell your friends and so forth. Visionary Ventures. I think it's really well worth it. There's a lot here, and I'll talk with you next time. Bye.